Tonight, the biggest city in America, the city that never sleeps, is about to shut down. The snow's getting heavier. A blizzard is on the way, and it's targeting New York and most of the Northeast. From Philadelphia to Boston, roads are ordered closed. Flights are canceled. Tens of millions are in the path of this potentially crippling storm. We have extensive coverage from a team of correspondents. A drone lands on the White House lawn, and now we know how it got there. Jeff Pegues has the latest. Many Americans haven't saved a cent for retirement, but Anthony Mason tells us it's not too late to start. And out of fuel, but not out of luck. John Blackstone on a dramatic landing in the Pacific.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley.
Good evening. We've taken the broadcast outside tonight because that's where the news is right now, with snowplows running all over Manhattan. A winter storm is hitting much of the Northeast. It's about to turn into a blizzard. In New York, we're expecting temperatures as low as 20, winds as high as 38 miles an hour, and blowing, blinding, steadily mounting snow. Blizzard warnings are up from Atlantic City, New Jersey to Portland, Maine. 52 million people are in the path of this nor'easter. Forecasts are calling for as much as 3 feet of snow. State and local governments have begun closing roads and shutting down public transportation. We have a team of correspondents covering the blizzard of 2015. First, we'll go to Don Dahler in New York, where the entire subway system is about to close. Don?
Yes, Scott, the last time New York City saw snowfall like what's being predicted for tonight was February 2006. 26.9 inches fell and virtually shut down the city. The mayor warns that tonight's storm might even be worse. The numbers are daunting. A city of 8 million people with 6,000 miles of streets. To try to stay ahead of history, it will take an army of 2,300 snowplows and salt trucks, their routes tracked by GPS.
You don't want to lose a storm like that.
You don't lose control of it. You want to stay on top of it.
You have to stay on top of it.
Harry Nespoli is president of the Sanitation Workers Union. He's trying to avoid the nightmare just last winter when over 10 inches of snow and unplowed streets paralyzed parts of the city. But this time, trucks are already deployed, and 6,400 drivers will put in 15-hour shifts. Do the methods change with this much snow over a normal snowstorm?
Oh, without a doubt. You know, I mean, we're bringing out the heavy equipment now.
All non-emergency drivers are being ordered off the streets by 11 p.m. tonight. Ambulances will be increased by 40%, and the fire department has added 500 additional staff. By midday and blowing snow and biting wind, the line was out the door at a Manhattan grocery store.
It's better to be safe and get some food, and I don't know, if it really hits the fan, I'll be able to stick it out at home.
At Penn Station, where 650,000 commuters pass through every day, some trains were shutting down by 8 p.m. tonight, so many headed home early. New Yorkers pride themselves on being tough, but Mayor Bill de Blasio pleaded with them to take this storm seriously.
Everything we know so far makes clear you can't underestimate this storm. This is not a typical storm. It's going to pack a real punch.
Public schools will be closed tomorrow. That's happened fewer than 10 times in the past 50 years. And Scott, New York's governor has activated the National Guard.
Eric Fisher is chief meteorologist at WBZ, our CBS station in Boston. Eric, what's coming next?
Well, Scott, a major snowstorm taking shape this evening right off the coastline. The storm beginning to deepen, the winds picking up, and the snow moving into places like New York, Boston, Providence, and Hartford. And we'll see those rates increase 1 to 3, maybe as much as 4 inches per hour. The heart of the storm overnight and into the first part of Tuesday, but it's in no rush to leave. It continues to sit, spin, produce strong winds, and slowly moves off to the north and east, finally leaving by the time we get toward Wednesday morning. And after that, a lot of snow to clean up. A big corridor of 1 to 2 foot snow totals. But in local areas where banding really takes shape, we could see up to 3 feet, and that puts you toward record territory, chasing the records in places like Boston and New York. Biggest snowstorm ever recorded in Boston, 27.5 inches, 26.9 in New York City. My gut feeling is maybe just shy, but either way, a major impact. And Scott, a storm that will shut down the region for at least a day.
Also in Boston tonight is Anna Werner. People there are being urged to stay home this evening, and soon they won't have much choice.
Well, Public transportation in Boston will stop at midnight, something that has created a planning nightmare for Massachusetts General Hospital. Nearly half the hospital's 25,000 employees use mass transit to get to work.
Really, the public transportation system being shut down is a very, very significant problem for us.
Emergency planning administrator David Reisman says many employees won't leave the hospital and will bed down on cots set up here. Others plan to stay at nearby hotels. The hospital treats an average of 60,000 patients on a normal day. Administrators say they learned from the last big storm in 2013 that brought more than 2 feet of snow and caused 3 deaths in the Boston area.
So every employee of the hospital received an email last night advising them that the storm was coming and what we were doing to prepare. And also those people then knew that if they were going to be expected to stay for several days, they had time to bring things with them.
Ryan Bakari works in the emergency department. Public transport's shutting down at midnight.
So if I can get out of here by that time, get home, and then try to figure out how to get here tomorrow, I'm not sure. I'll probably end up spending the night here or nearby.
You think you will?
Yeah, most likely.
On a cot?
Maybe.
So how do you get ambulances to patients in a blizzard? Well, Scott, they're adding extra ambulances on every shift, adding 4-wheel drive vehicles, and say they will use sleds to get people out to the ambulances if necessary.
Anna Werner in Boston tonight. Thanks, Anna. As the snow moves in, the airlines canceled more flights. So far, more than 6,500 through tomorrow, affecting travelers all over the country. More about that now from Mark Strassman in Philadelphia.
Disruption rippled through America's aviation system ahead of the blizzard. There were also 1,900 flight delays on top of all the cancellations. No-fly destinations in the Northeast became headaches even in Los Angeles, where Tanya Barkle's flight to Boston was going nowhere.
No flights are not only not going anywhere today, tomorrow. We're not leaving here till Wednesday.
At Philadelphia's airport, 3 inches of snow is a challenge. Tonight's forecast calls for 10. This is the staging area for 68 pieces of snow equipment: plows, brooms, blowers, and chemical trucks. Keith Bruni runs Philadelphia's airport operations.
We're in constant communications with our airlines, and we're doing our level best to time our snow removal operation to make sure that we're open and available when they decide to start their operations back up.
Philadelphia's airport will keep at least one of its runways open, but airlines will stop flying from midnight here until at least mid-afternoon tomorrow. At New York's LaGuardia, Scott, 70% of tomorrow's flights have already been canceled.
Mark Strassman reporting for us tonight. Mark, thanks. The worst of the storm is expected to reach Maine by early tomorrow morning. Jerika Duncan is there.
Workers at New Meadows Lobster gassed up its boats on Casco Bay and moved them to a more sheltered location. Owner Peter McElhaney says the hurricane-force winds could be disastrous.
Mother Nature, she can really mess you up, right? If you don't pay attention to what's going on, you can lose a lot of money in the seafood business.
McElhaney has been in the lobster business for nearly 4 decades, and he knows what's ahead.
You're talking $70,000, $80,000 easy.
$70,000 or $80,000 that
yeah.
you could lose if you're not back in business by next week.
Yeah.
At this hardware store in Portland, cashier Jean Turnbull says there's been a steady rush of customers preparing since the weekend.
To get a foot to 2 feet, you know, all the Mainers and all the Portland, everybody kind of gets scared. You got to stock up.
While local authorities are warning people to stay home, this waterfront oyster bar intends to stay open.
As individuals, I think we're just going to hunker down and enjoy the storm.
As an extra precaution, the U.S. Coast Guard spent much of the day on the water. Scott had issued broadcast warnings to mariners about the potential for a blizzard.
Thanks, Jerika. The East, of course, gets hit quite a lot. That 2006 storm that Don Dahler mentioned earlier dropped a foot of snow from Virginia to Maine. A storm in January of 1996 caused nearly $1 billion in damage. And a 1960 snowstorm was blamed for at least 80 deaths. There was something else in the sky over the White House that caused a little amusement and a little concern. Jeff Pegues reports that a 2-foot diameter drone that plopped down on the lawn this morning was no threat, but the Secret Service is considering the possibilities.
Just after 3 a.m., a Secret Service agent heard a noise and saw a small quadcopter flying low over the White House grounds. The device crashed on the southeast side of the complex. The president and first lady are traveling overseas, but their daughters are in Washington. There are strict flight restrictions around the White House, but small drones are hard to detect. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest.
The early indications are that it does not pose any sort of ongoing threat right now to anybody at the White House.
But drones or unmanned aircraft systems are a potential security nightmare across the globe. In 2013, a drone was hovering over a crowd and then dropped at the feet of German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Law enforcement here in the U.S. is actively looking for a system that could disable a drone. Counterterrorism officials like New York City Police Deputy Chief Salvatore DePace believe threats from drones are limitless.
Chemical weapons, if the technology is there, which we're thinking it is and will be. Guns, definitely. We've seen that. We've seen some paintball video, very accurately hitting the targets with the paintball.
In today's case, the drone was not weaponized, nor did it have a camera. The Secret Service says the drone's operator was using his for recreational purposes. Scott, the Federal Aviation Administration is still developing regulations for commercial drone use.
Jeff Pagay is in our Washington newsroom. Thanks, Jeff. The president was in India, where he became the first American president to attend the Republic Day parade celebrating the Indian Constitution. It's a big show of military hardware, most of it Russian-made. And that was the point of Mr. Obama's trip, opening Indian markets to U.S. goods. He sealed a deal for trade in civilian nuclear power. The U.S. military tonight is claiming a significant blow against the Islamic terrorist group known as ISIS. The U.S. says that Kurdish forces, backed by U.S.-led airstrikes, have pushed ISIS out of 90% of the town of Kobani. That would be a serious reversal for ISIS, which fought desperately to control the city. The airstrikes began in August, and David Martin has managed to get a rare look at how the targets are chosen.
The target was a poultry farm that ISIS had turned into a staging area. It was located in Syria, but the planning for this strike and hundreds like it was carried out some 6,000 miles away at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina.
So a little bit of debris over here.
CBS News was given an inside look at the targeting center, where intelligence analysts pore over satellite photos.
In a way like a detective does, we put together the picture with all these bits of intelligence.
In a typical week, Staff Sergeant Penny and each of the other analysts investigate up to 20 different locations to find 3 legitimate targets.
The ultimate intent is to build something that holds water, that makes it to the end, that is strikeable.
It's a battle pitting the precision of American weapons against an enemy spread out across 2 countries.
Precision is the ability to very specifically know the exact coordinates of any spot on the earth and to hit that spot.
Down to what?
Down to, let's say, a foot.
Colonel Scott Murray, the chief intelligence officer for the air war, told us what it took to destroy a building ISIS was using as a weapons factory.
It's quite the structure. It did take quite a few weapons to do it.
The first 2 hit and the building disappeared in a cloud of debris, but 18 more satellite-guided bombs followed, each with a delayed action fuse.
It just allows the munition to penetrate deeper.
The air campaign is an impressive display of American firepower. But is it winning the war against ISIS?
Has the bombing campaign taken back any territory from ISIS?
I'd say approximately 700 square kilometers have been regained.
That's in Iraq, where ISIS still holds 55,000 square kilometers it seized from Iraqi and Kurdish forces. In Syria, ISIS is still expanding.
ISIL has great leeway in northeast Syria. They're not opposed on the ground in that region.
In March, the U.S. military plans to start training a force of about 5,000 fighters to oppose ISIS on the ground. But Pentagon officials say it will be late this year or early next before they are capable of taking back lost ground. Scott?
David Martin at the Pentagon. David, thanks. We're going to be heading back inside as we continue the broadcast in a moment. Saving for retirement, why experts say saving a little is better than nothing. And what saved a pilot when he ran out of fuel. When the CBS Evening News continues. On Wall Street, the financial markets plan to be open tomorrow despite the blizzard. Today, prices were little changed. The Dow finished with a gain of just 6 points. Millions of Americans are invested in the stock market, many of them through their pensions or their 401k plans. But polls show that more than 2 out of 5 Americans have no retirement savings at all. Anthony Mason now with a wake-up call in tonight's Eye on Money.
Kevin Grubb has his eyes on his financial future.
I started saving for retirement when I was 24.
Grubb, who turned 30 earlier this month, works in the Career Center at a university outside Philadelphia. He saw what happened in the Great Recession when well over half of Americans say they used up some or all of their savings.
And so I felt like it would be a good idea to get started as soon as I could, knowing that if I had the longevity, by the time I was an older age, maybe I'd be closer to being more comfortable with retiring.
Americans have put away more than $24 trillion for retirement, but more than 30% still say they have no retirement savings or pension at all.
Is there a point where it's too late?
It's never too late to start building or adding to that nest egg.
Sarah Holden is head of retirement research at the Investment Company Institute.
It's easy to get intimidated or scared about retirement.
It is easy to get intimidated or scared, but the thing to do is realize you have your whole career to work on it, and you can build this nest egg little by little, paycheck by paycheck.
If you're able to sock away, say, $25 a week, assuming moderate growth in a retirement fund, within 10 years, you'd save more than $15,000. In 15 years, you'd have more than $25,000. And by 20 years, your savings would be more than $37,000. From the day he got his first job, Kevin Grubb has put aside at least 10% of his paycheck, even though he's still paying off his student loans.
Saving for retirement is something I don't want to compromise for a short-term pleasure or joy. So I've been able to prioritize it, and I want to keep doing it.
But it doesn't have to be 10% of your salary. Financial advisors say the important thing is to put aside something regularly. Anything, Scott, is better than nothing at all.
Anthony, thanks very much. Well, imagine running not out of money, but out of fuel over the ocean. That's when a pilot's best friend took over. That's next.
Tonight's Eye on Money segment is sponsored by Voya Financial, changing the way you think of retirement.
You're not going to notice this, but tonight an asteroid is going to fly right by us. That big object is asteroid 2004 BL86, being tracked by NASA. It's 1/3 of a mile wide, and it has its own moon. That's the little spot flying into the picture. The asteroid will come within 745,000 miles of Earth. That, of course, is no threat. NASA may come to mind when you hear about a splashdown, but what you're about to see may change that. Here's John Blackstone.
The pilot of the single-engine plane was more than 250 miles from Hawaii when he ran into trouble with his fuel system. Fortunately, he had a parachute on his airplane. A Coast Guard rescue aircraft was nearby, capturing this video as the plane first plunged toward the Pacific. Then, as the parachute fully deployed, it settled into a more orderly descent. The aircraft, a Cirrus SR-22, comes equipped with a parachute for emergency use. Why doesn't every plane have this?
I don't know.
Pilot Diogo Rao owns and flies a Cirrus. So this blows off, basically.
That blows off.
What happens?
There's a red handle that you pull. It triggers a rocket, which shoots out the back and launches a parachute.
Off Hawaii, the parachute delivered both pilot and plane safely to the ocean. The pilot climbed into an emergency raft and was soon picked up by the crew of a nearby Holland America cruise ship. Cirrus says its parachutes have been used 51 times in the past 15 years, saving 104 people. It's going to be a big decision to pull that red handle.
It's going to be a big decision, yes. You're not getting back up and taking off again after that.
Lou Morton is the surviving pilot of the Hawaii-bound aircraft.
When everything started to go south and the U.S. Coast Guard and then the coordination with Holland was more than impressive.
He was delivering the plane to Australia. It was last seen partially submerged in the ocean. Diogo Rao bought the parachute-equipped Cirrus partly to feel safer flying his 2-year-old daughter. While he hates to see any accident in the air, the happy ending off Hawaii provides reassurance that the red handle will work should it ever be needed. John Blackstone, CBS News, Hayward, California.
We'll be back with an update on the blizzard of 2015 in a moment. Updating our top story, blizzard warnings up from southern New Jersey to southern Maine as a nor'easter moves up the coast. More than 50 million people are in the path of the storm. Blizzard conditions are expected here in New York City later this evening. The entire subway system is shutting down, and roads will be closed to all but emergency vehicles. Forecasters tell us some places could get as much as 3 feet of snow. A good night to stay home. And that's the CBS Evening News for tonight. For all of us at CBS News all around the world, good night.